You were a boxer. How did you get into that? Was that something you did in London, or is that something you picked up here?
This is something I did back in, not London, in Manchester. So my uni days. And the reason I got into it at first was as an asthmatic. I figured, let me just do something to kind of, boost my cardio. Really into football at the time. So it was supposed to be just fitness. That was the original plan. And then I think I had a bit of a knack for it, and I got invited to spar. And typically sparring is kind of, like you were saying before the show started, practice fighting, going at 70%-ish. And I guess my willingness to do it kind of, struck the coach as something as, a characteristic that's worth developing.
But you're also pretty tall and pretty well built. So.
Is that good or bad for boxing?
And that being said, all my teammates, I guess, would say, you have like freakishly long arms. And that might come to your benefit. And in the boxing, I try and use that as one of my key tactics.
I think a lot of people outside of China will be very surprised that boxing is something that happens in Beijing and then in China. Could you tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about the scene?
Now, I might be wrong here, but I think that after 2020, obviously quarantine took the world and sporting events kind of subsided. And one of the few sporting events that could take place were combat sports, because they don't require a crowd necessarily, and obviously it's just two people as opposed to like whole teams and stuff. And I think off the back of that, the interests grew exponentially.
Really?
I think. Yeah.
I do have a friend who's a female friend from Dongbei. She's from Shenyang. Very tall girl as well, interesting enough. She, for some reason, decided to take on not boxing, but Muay Thai. She has been, it's like a drug for her. She goes every day and she says it's so exhausting. But if I don't go back the next day, I feel like my soul is missing. And she's been trying to get me to go. All I can say is good luck. I am not going to, risk my life and other people's lives.
I say, like, I've said this quite a few times. I know, like, boxing doesn't really have the mysticism of, like, East Asian martial art, like Kung Fu or something like that. But it is still very much a martial art, I think. And to kind of double down on what your friend said, I think there is, like, a spiritual element to it, actually. I think that idea of, like, doing something that occupies your attention 101%. There is no way you're distracted by something else. And like it's a solo sport. There really is a sense of like developing. And whereas obviously, you can set targets for yourself, just like you can in anything. But I feel that in martial arts, you can never perfect it. You can always seek improvement, regardless of how high a level you are. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it, I find.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how many venues are there to actually go do boxing? Are these gyms or are there actual arenas?
I guess one of the biggest chains would be like a gym brand called CTC. And they essentially own quite a few different combat sport gyms around Beijing. They frequently put events on as well. And it looks like over the last few years, those events have just grown and grown and grown. And with that has become like people's interest in the sport as well.
I've heard of this thing, and I think I personally know maybe 2 or 3 girls that is competing, the red word. The Shuangjing Showdown. Is that apparently for people who box, that's like a one of the biggest local events they could be involved in.
Yeah. The last one was in April, I think.
Oh, they had one this year?
They had one this year. Yeah, unfortunately, couldn't participate. My hand was busted up at the time. But I was DJing instead. So
I think I saw you at something called Fight Club.
Yeah.
And there was 300 people there. I came with cameras. And
First rule, Fight Club.
I wanted to take pictures. By the time there were like 5 or 6 fights in a row before your fight.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even get up to take pictures because they were like so rammed around is it called the net? What's that?
The ring.
The ring.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
how little I know about
it
boxing.
doesn't actually have like a ring shape. It's a square.
Yeah.
So why
It's
it's
the
called a ring?
square ring.
Yeah.
But I was like holding my camera over the crowd as well as I could, trying desperately to take pictures, because there was keen interest. And I think you were the
last
featured
one, I think. Yeah.
fight at that
Yeah.
event.
Not
And
so
you
much.
won.
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you often win?
Yeah. What's the
I've
biggest badge of honor you've had here?
9 altogether.
Wow.
And I've won 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
Don't fight Fantao.
I know.
Or your friend.
Do not listen yet. She's not here anymore. It's okay.
I think.
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm gonna back the Muay Thai fighter. They have a broader range of skills.
It's they fight with their knee, right? They
And
jump
elbows.
with their knee and
they can kick.
Looks scary.
What's the? I'm gonna ask this question on behalf of people who don't box. Except apart from the adrenaline you get from this kind of really intensive training hours, what's the high? What's the sense of pleasure that you get out of sparring or competing in a real fight?
I suppose is striving for. This sounds super corny, I know, but bear with me. It's striving for excellence. So not so much reaching it itself, but just trying to pursue it, which I like. The fact that there is a constant sense of trying to improve, measuring your capabilities with other people is, I think, I guess you find that in all sports, but that's something that particularly resonates with me and boxing.
And this is going to be a stupider question than the last one. Do you get a stronger fighting will if you don't like your opponent?
Oh goodness!
Do you know what? That's not a stupid question.
Wow.
That's a good question, I think. So it doesn't happen often, but there have been a couple of times when I've sparred with someone who I'm not the biggest fan of.
Yeah.
And I found that instead of trying to win, I'm a bit more obsessed with trying to hurt. And that takes me out of my zone. It takes me out of the flow. It doesn't let me execute the skills that I feel I've practiced.
So is that why professional boxers seem to try to agitate each other so that they don't perform as well?
In my opinion, right, professional boxing is kind of halfway in the entertainment industry, halfway in the sporting industry. And I guess naturally wanting to draw bigger audiences, get bigger crowds, get bigger gate fees, bigger pay-per-views, etc. You have to
put on a
kind of force a narrative. And that narrative might be, you said this to me, I'm going to say this to you as a... Yeah, so kind of pretending that there's a hatred that might not actually be there.
They go out for drinks later.
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of the time, right? Like straight after one of these big, like high value fights, straight afterwards they're hugging each other and shaking each other's hand and stuff. In the amateur boxing side of life, I don't think there's a need for it.
Because, if you lose, you lose. Just walk off.
Just
go.
Just get your DD and go home and
Hello.